In these problems, we need to pay attention to something called the order of operations. And what that means is, well, in these problems, it means multiplication and division before addition and subtraction. You can't just read the problem left to right and do the operations in that order. You can't, in this one, if you said 3 times 9 is 27 and then you subtracted 7 from it, that would be wrong. You have to do this multiplication of 7 times 8 first. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do the multiplication first, then our subtraction and our addition. 3 times 9 is 27. Then we have a minus sign. And 7 times 8 is 56. And then we have a plus 4. Now this will get us the correct answer. So let's see, 27 minus 56, I think that's 29. Sorry, negative 29, and then plus 4. So that's going to equal a negative 25. Might want to double check that on a calculator just to make sure. Let's try another one. So here we've got a whole bunch of negative signs, which can get really confusing. But again, this problem comes down to a couple of multiplication problems and then a couple of subtraction problems, and we need to do multiplication first. So here we've got negative 3 times negative 4, and here we've got 1 times negative 4. You'll want to remember that when you multiply a negative by a negative, you get a positive. So this is just 12. And when you multiply a positive by a negative, you get a negative. 1 negative sign negative, 2 negative signs positive. So 1 times negative 4, negative 4. Now let's be careful to rewrite everything else back in here. We've got our negative 1. We've got this minus sign, we can't forget that. And we've got this minus sign, we can't forget that. So these parentheses here aren't necessary anymore. There's nothing to multiply or change here. So this is just a negative 1 minus 12 minus a negative 4. Negative 1 minus 12, that's going to be negative 13. So this is negative 13 minus a negative 4. And when you minus a negative, it's just like adding. You're doing the opposite of subtraction. So negative 13 plus 4 is going to be a negative 9. Again, use a calculator if that gets confusing. And let's try one more. And again, here I'm going to look for the multiplication problems first. And, you know, back in that first problem, we saw there are multiple ways to show multiplication. You can put the little dot in between them, or you can just put the numbers next to each other in parentheses. So we'll be looking for numbers next to each other in parentheses down here. Here we have negative 6 times a negative 2, so that's a multiplication problem. And here we have 3 times a negative 9. That's another multiplication problem. The rest of this just looks like addition and subtraction. So let's take care of these two pieces first. Here we have a negative times a negative, so the result is going to be positive. And we have 6 times 2, so that's a positive 12. Then we have our plus sign. And 3 times a negative 9, so that's one negative sign in there. So that's going to be a negative, and 3 times 9 is 27, so negative 27. And then we have our plus 6 and our minus 7. So 12 plus a negative, well, plus a negative is just the same thing as subtraction. So this is 12 minus 27, and here 6 minus 7, well, that part is pretty easy. That's a negative 1, 6 minus 7. And 12 minus 27 minus 1, I think that's going to come out to be a negative 16. Double check that on your calculator, but I think that's how all that adds up. So that is a little practice with the order of operations.